Alright, so Durful Gaming here. We're going to kind of take a look at this list for Jhoira that recently won Jeweled Lotus Lottenkamp over in Germany. So, of course, there are a few things here that really kind of stick out. Now, I don't know personally about any restrictions for the tournament. I don't know if these were personal choices. I don't, due to card availability, or if the tournament was proxy friendly or anything like that. So, kind of first things first, Tezzeret the Seeker. One of the big reasons why the primer list doesn't run Tezzeret is because of his cost, and he's a planeswalker. Most planeswalkers, you're not really, I would argue, getting the full use out of them in a lot of scenarios. Um, Most of the times when you put in a planeswalker, you're going to get either their plus or their minus, assuming their minus is within their starting loyalty. So, in terms of that, when you're looking at Tezzeret, you're looking at his first two abilities. You're never really going for his third. So Tezzeret, interesting choice. Also 5 CMC, the only 5 CMC in this iteration of the deck that I see. So just all around interesting. Next interesting piece here is going to be Emery Lurker of the Loch. So there's an a small egg package in here. However, not something that I would argue is game breaking, as you'll hear when we talk about some of these later on. I like Emery. I've always thought Emery had a spot in Jhoira. I personally have just never found a way to make it work. Spellskite is also another one. This is just mostly free redirection. Again, I think part of this is purely card choice. I obviously don't know the users or the players' thought process going into this tournament. So, but we know that the last table they were at, we know the turn order, thanks to Eisenhertz for his recap. Um, Walking Ballista. So this one actually is not as much an out of the left field play, honestly, because this guy is still playing Dramatic Reversal and Isochron Scepter. So having Walking Ballista in here is just going for an efficient win con. Uh, it's not so much the sorceries are bad, it's just the lack of a couple of things. And again, I don't know if this is personal card choice because they also link to his primary list, and it is just as light on sorceries. So I don't really know. Again, it could just be down to personal taste and preference. So another thing, the instants are also a little light. I am glad to see Filter Out in here. That was one of the big ones released recently. Fierce Guardianship makes sense. Pact of Negation makes sense. A lot of free interaction makes sense. And then we have Mana Drain. So one of the reasons we cut Mana Drain is because it got increasingly difficult to utilize that colorless mana. So having that colorless mana also come a turn later doesn't necessarily help very much. That plus, if you're trying to win, you don't need mana. You need a counterspell that's easily producible. Delay isn't bad. Dispel isn't bad. I believe Dispel is currently in the current iteration of the primer. Delay is not. Deflecting Swat, again, more free interaction. Chain of Vapor. A lot of people, when you see Chain of Vapor in Jhoira, you don't necessarily think about it in terms of you can bounce your own stuff. So that's one of the things that Jhoira is able to abuse quite efficiently, is using things like Filter Out, Hercules, Recall, Retract to bounce things back to your hand to replay them. So if you're late in the game and you can't afford one of these, like say you have Paradoxical Outcome, you can't afford it, you kind of need to reset some of your rocks so that you can get the mana. Chain of Vapor your own stuff. It says target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. It doesn't say who. It doesn't say it can't be you. So just bear that in mind. March of Swirling Mist. This is the other interesting one that I wanted to talk about a little bit here. So let's read it. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of blue cards from your hand. The spell costs 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way. up to X target creatures phase out. And then we get the reminder text for phase. While they're phased out, they're treated as though they don't exist. Each one phases in before its controller untaps during the next untap step. Okay, so this is, I guess, meant to be like a mini Teferi's protection, something that you can throw out to keep yourself safe. I probably need to check and see if this affects them as, like, entering the battlefield. Because if they enter again, well, no, either way, no matter which way you slice it, it's not cast, so Jhoira's not going to trigger. Okay. Yeah, more removal. I mean, not bad. None of this is bad. It's just interesting. We run either Spellbomb. Okay, Astral Cornucopia. I guess because Dramatic Reversal and Isochron Scepter is here, I personally have just never understood Astral Cornucopia, because at best you pay 3 into it to get 1 charge counter, and it's 3 for, you know, a 1 mana. It's not exactly efficient. I guess you can, we should say, cast it for nothing. It just then taps for nothing. So that to me is a bit of a turnoff, but, you know, to each their own. Alright, most of these are pretty straightforward. Okay, Imposter Mech. So, in watching the recap of the final game, Jhoira was stolen with a Gilded Drake, and then this guy used Imposter Mech to clone Jhoira so that they could continue on. So, I guess another way to phrase this is, I mean, let's be honest, I've never liked Gilded Drake. I understand in some decks it's an absolute necessity because it's just how they deal with things, but I feel like as time has gone on and we've gotten much better removal, we've gotten much better ways to counter and control that, that Gilded Drake has become less and less important. Now, Imposter Mech fills a very different niche, though, because it's an artifact. If somebody steals Jhoira, yes, it is a way to get Jhoira back. Completely understandable. The flip side to that is if we have Jhoira out and we want to get a copy of a value creature, it is possible we draw off the cast. There's a lot of various upsides. So this one I can see, but at the same time, it is a vehicle. Yes, it can clone creatures, but it is a vehicle. So that means it is a little bit more difficult to deal with for opponents as well. So, I think that's something that's been overlooked in the past. Isochron Scepter, Jeweled Amulet, Jeweled Lotus, so pretty much all the mana rocks. Mishra's Bauble, Urza's Bauble, more of that egg package. Forge, Top, Springleaf Drum. So, Springleaf Drum is an interesting one, because we probably don't really care about blocking with Jhoira. That one's really not that important, I would argue. So she's usually going to be available to tap, which is helpful. So Mystic, Rhystic, Underworld Breach, and Words of Wind. So Underworld Breach, a lot of people are probably looking at this. Remember, we do have LED and Brain Freeze still. So not the Wheels package, because, let's be honest, you really want to give new cards to your opponents, potentially giving them their own Dramatic Reversal, Deflecting Swat, Deadly Rollick, and those cards. Do we really want to give them those to try and stop us? The answer is no, we don't. So I completely agree. In fact, we, I think, ultimately have either removed it or severely toned it down in the primer. Me, my personal list, it's completely gone. I don't run Wheels at all anymore. Pretty much to the point where I'm even considering selling off my Wheel of Fortune. So, you know, there's that. But, alright, now this is where things start to swing back onto the interesting side. So Ancient Tomb, I get. Cavern and Souls, I get. Command Tower, Fiery Islet, Floodstrand, Gemstone Caverns, Great Furnace. Okay, so let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. These don't do anything for Jhoira. They don't. This user is also running 33 artifacts. which we feel that the threshold's a little bit closer to 34, 36, but close enough. I'm not going to argue semantics. I really don't think these do much. Now, if this user, this person, had really great experience when they bounced all their artifacts and having lands to replay, I don't know. I just don't see that as much of a value. Same with Inventor's Fair. I mean, you gotta pay 4 to sack it. I mean, it's just a shade under Tezzeret because you gotta pay 5, and you're depending on what you're going to look for, you're most likely sacking Tezzeret. I've never been a fan of the fact that the island count is so low. Mishra's Workshop, there's only a handful of artifacts that actually cost 3 colorless. Now, yes, I am 100% aware of the fact that you could just tap this, generate the 3, and put it in other artifacts, or cast multiple artifacts. I do understand that. However, look at that price tag. Who wants to shell out $2,300 for a physical copy of Mishra's Workshop? I do want to own one purely for the sake of I love artifacts, and hence why I love Jhoira. Do I think I would actually play with it? This is one of those cards that no, it would probably just be priceless or grow in value and sit in a binder, which is part of the reason why I don't own one. River Glide Pathway and Lava Glide Pathway. So, the land with turrets. So often you don't really know which one to cast. Everyone's going to tell you to put out which one you need. So that means you have to have a really good understanding of what it is that you're doing. Not trying to be funny, not trying to, demean your play, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you need, because this cannot change. You can't flip it again next turn. You can't upend it and replay it. That's not how this works. Once you cast it, that's it. Now, most often, because the deck is very starved for blue sources, you're going to want it to be River Glide. On occasion, however, like if you were stuck and you couldn't come up with red mana for, say, casting Jhoira or Dockside or something like that, then yeah, you're going to hit the Lava Glide side. Again, Seed of the Synod, don't really know what it's doing here. Talaria West. So, a lot of people, I feel, forget that this thing has Transmute. And, yes, it's going to go get you something for 0. Why are some of these 0-costed tutors in here? If it's not apparent by now, I'm about to make it super apparent. It's Walking Ballista. That's the whole... I get why. Like, it may have sounded like I was questioning it before. I've understood this whole time. It's all about getting Walking Ballista. This is about... I would argue, truthfully, this is about as turbo a deck as you can get. That's also, fun fact, why Urza Saga is in here, because it's just a delayed 0-costed tutor to go get Walking Ballista. It's all about getting to Ballista. It's also why you still run Gamble with Underworld Breach, is because effectively at that point you were able to get off some cast of Brain Freeze on yourself, a couple, just so you could get stuff in the yard to Underworld Breach, Gamble. Doesn't matter if you pitch whatever, you're getting it either way. So, Gamble is tied to Underworld Breach. Just in case anybody also watching this does not already know that. So, all in all, it feels like a lot of the choices here were just aimed directly at the tournament this user was playing into. Okay? That's really what it feels like. Because... and there's not enough of everything to make full sense. Emery is going to, I guess, be probably... It sounds like Emery and the Imposter Mech were kind of the standouts in the plays, because it said Emery was used early on to recur some artifacts, and then later on Imposter Mech to clone Jhoira and help this guy push through for the win. So I absolutely get the choices. And this was, like I said, that's the only thing that makes any sort of sense. These choices were made to play into the tournament. Full stop. Would I have done things a little bit differently? Probably. Personally, I would have. But then again, that's my playstyle and my opinion. Um, I would restructure this land package. I'll be perfectly honest. Unless your life total is just getting pressured, like I really feel like Inventor's Fair is just kind of eh. Out of all the choices, this one's the one that I'm still left a little scratching in my head. Um, yeah, I get that it's a tutor, but it's 4 for a tutor. This is late game tutor. This is not unless there's something I don't know or I'm not picking up on here. This is definitely the standout as huh. So, but of course, that's just my analysis. Kudos to our man Xeno for winning the tournament. We on the Jhoira server we're proud. We're glad to see our girl in the top 16 and in a win all at the same time. So we're definitely still working through some analysis. If Xeno catches this video, feel free to come in Discord and talk to us. Check it out. Um, we'd love to get your thoughts and your feedback on your deck. If any of what I said is right or wrong, I'm okay with that. Because I just don't know. Uh, but yeah, no, good job, man.